Everyone has a story to tell. It's my mission to tell it. Unscripted, unedited. We are on the record. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarina, and thank you so much for joining us for this episode of On the Record, a show that explores topics that are trending nationally. And right now, a lot of people are talking about real estate. What are we doing with real estate? Well, we have a wonderful show for you here today. We are bringing in Nathan Williams, a realtor here in the Tampa Bay area. We also have Vincent Anzalone joining us from the Chicago area. And in the later half of the show, we have Dave Duquette, a financial advisor, who will also join us weighing in on this topic, real estate. So Nathan, let's start with you.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am professionally, I've been in banking. I've done I had a short stint with financial advising that did not work well for me. And today I'm a realtor in the great Tampa Bay area.
Okay, and we've got to talk about the great Tampa Bay area. But Vincent, let's turn to you. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Similar to Nathan, I was with a mortgage bank, and I had my own company for about 10 years. Before that, I worked with you, Sarina.
I know. Okay, so we love this show, unedited, unscripted. And let's get real here. Vincent and I actually worked together in television news in the Quad Cities.
In 1990.
1990. Wow.
No, 1994. 1994 is when I met you. And then, yes, I got into TV for a little bit. So I did TV for 7 years. Decided it was just the small towns were tough for me. You know, being from Chicago, it's tough to live in these small towns and the whole situation. So I came back to Chicago and got into mortgages, which I did mortgages for 10 years. And then 2008 happened, had that massive crash. And I got back, kind of stepped out of real estate for a little bit. And then I got back in as a realtor a couple of years later. So I've been doing that for a while now, and I think this was my original calling, frankly.
Yeah. So Vincent, before we go back here to Nathan, talk to us. You know, there's this image right now of Florida and that you cannot even afford to move here. Do you see a lot of people, you know, nationally we've heard that so many people are leaving other states and just flocking to Florida. What's the impression over there?
There's definitely a large group of Chicagoans that have headed down to not just Florida, but I would say Florida is probably the main destination. But I did send $7 million in business to Nashville last year.
Nashville?
Yes. Also, Austin, Dallas, Scottsdale, Phoenix, you know, that area. What's interesting about Florida, and from what I can understand, Nathan can correct me if I'm not, you know, the increase in house values has gone up so significantly recently that I think once they fill all the demand of everyone moving there, then there's a worry that it could bounce back and come the other way. Some people, you know, overpaid significantly because they just had to be in Florida. Are you seeing a slowdown there, Nathan, or are you still firing all cylinders?
Yeah, there is a noticeable slowdown here in the last 2 to 3 months. I would say, to your point, things took off quickly, in a large part due to COVID. People were given the opportunity to now transfer on their jobs, keep their jobs, a lot of times from the Northeast or from other parts of the country where the pay was different. So now they're living here, and they have the wherewithal to, as Vince said, overpay. So you get 3 or 4 houses in the same community. I was involved in a transaction where this buyer paid $106,000 over. Now we're not talking about $1 million house here. We're talking a $600,000 house. They paid over $700,000. So that happens 2 or 3 times. The comps for that area have now skyrocketed. So you have sort of this artificially inflated price. And to Vince's point, at some point, we're going to have to realize that the great migration to Florida is going to slow down. And coupled with interest rates, we may have a problem on our hands. But yeah, there has been a noticeable slowdown.
There has been. And I want to talk about interest rates in just a moment. But Vincent, Vincent and Nathan, and I appreciate, this is a conversation. So Vincent,
Yeah.
places like Chicago, New York, LA, San Francisco, they say, oh gosh, it's been too expensive, to live there. And now
Yeah.
Florida is getting that, right? We're getting that image. But what is the status of those type of cities? And is it right now, is it the time to buy in some of those high visible places?
Well, I'm a realtor, and I would not be doing my job if I didn't say it's a time to buy. But there's always a good time to buy if you get a good price. I would say New York and LA are a little different than Chicago because they, like Florida, can have these significant swings, 25, 30, sometimes 40% up in 1 year. Chicago never gets that. Chicago, even in this huge boom, I would say and I'm talking the city, the suburbs, the suburban area of Chicago land is a little different. In the city, 10% really at the most, even in this crazy economy. What's nice about that for Chicagoans who own, if we hit a recession or a correction or whatever you want to call it, it's unlikely that we will fall back that much. We may fall back 5, but even if we come back 10%, a lot of people can live through that. They're somewhat insulated by the equity they put in the house, and hopefully we will not see a ton of foreclosures here. Chicago just, the good news is it doesn't come back. The bad news is it doesn't go up a lot. And so I think it's probably the same as it is in Florida. Even if Florida has a correction, if you hold on to property for 10 years, sometime in that 10-year frame, you'll be able to make money. It may not be in exactly 10 years. It may be in year 7 or 6 or 5. But in that 10 years, if you own, it will make sense. So let's not be all doom and gloom about Florida possibly correcting. I don't think that's going to really hurt people. People still love Florida.
So Nathan, react to that, because you and I were talking, and so many people, for instance, me included, I live in a home in South Tampa, but hey, I could sell my home for a significant amount.
Sure.
But where am I going to go?
Correct.
There's nowhere to go.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you can get the big payday, right? But anything you buy in this Tampa Bay market is going to be, it will have realized that same bump that you realized in equity in your property. So unless one is relocating to a new market, a lot of times that's what's holding sellers back. Especially if they have to stay here in Tampa, there is no way to really make that make sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Well, I think you hold on. I think you hold on to your home unless you have an absolute necessity of upgrading. Maybe your family is growing. But if it's for the purpose of upgrading, which we all like to do, that's a tough pill to swallow right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So Vincent, you react to that as well. So we just had this hurricane special, as you know, Hurricane Ian sadly hit Southwest Florida. And now during the special, Mayor Rick Kreisman, who was the former mayor of St. Petersburg, made an interesting point that there's so many people from across the country that are moving to Florida, but now we have people from the Southwest also migrating to Florida. Does that help places like Chicago, though, if there's so many people coming to one community?
Chicago is, I love Chicago. I'm not leaving.
I know
you're
born and raised. You're born
Yeah.
and raised in Chicago. And before, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but before you answer, one of the reasons why I also wanted you on, of course, for personal reasons too, I've known Vincent for a really long time, but we just recently did analytics for the show, and we have a large viewership based out of Chicago, which I found to be really interesting.
Good.
Yes. So share more about Chicago.
People are following you from Chicago, it sounds like.
So flattered by that.
Yeah. In Chicago, there's been a lot of talk about crime, which is up, definitely. But and every major city has seen that. What I'm seeing, which is interesting, is people who live in LA, New York, and San Francisco moving to Chicago because they still have crime in those cities. Now with this new, basically because of COVID, a lot of new work setups where people like me can work at home in their wife's plant factory. What we're seeing is these people from other cities move to Chicago because it's more affordable. Let's say you have $1 million to spend on a house. In New York, that's a good 1 bedroom, maybe a 2 bed, 1 bath. Same in San Francisco. Here, you can get a 4-5 bedroom house, with a little bit of a yard. Not going to be like, super fancy, but pretty nice house, way more space. And there's definitely some really safe, great neighborhoods in Chicago. I live in Lakeview. It's pretty great. So I'm seeing that for these people in major cities who do have money, who want more for it because they can live anywhere.
So interesting. And I feel like we are becoming one of those cities now that, $1 million is not going
these days. Yeah.
where it used to.
Right.
Well, we talked about interest rates, but why don't we go to a break right now, because I want to bring in Dave Duquette and continue this conversation on real estate. I'm getting a lot of questions on, hey, I have some cash in the bank. Should I pay off the mortgage, or do we wait to pay off the mortgage? What should we do? So stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back.
Spring's break. If it hasn't happened, it will happen. Here at Precision, I get the question of, can you fix this same day? All the time. Nobody wants to wait a few days to get their garage door fixed. The face that they make every time I say I can fix this right now is priceless. No, I'm not an actor. Would I be a good actor? Well, I could probably do it. I mean, this face is made for the camera.
Precision Door Service, a name you can trust.
Oh man, I'm gonna regret that.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to On the Record. We're talking about real estate today. And I mean, no matter your social economic class, real estate affects all of us. Joining me is Nathan Williams in the studio. We have Vincent Anzalone coming in from Chicago, and Dave Duquette. Welcome back to On the Record, prominent financial advisor in the Tampa Bay area. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, it's always great to be here, Sarina. Thanks
Dave,
for having me.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. So Dave, you were listening to the conversation in the control room. What is your initial reaction about real estate and what we're seeing?
Well, I think Vincent and Nathan were obviously giving some great advice. One of the most difficult things that I'm seeing right now is obviously the interest rates are so much higher than they were a couple of years ago. So for people that are buying, their mortgage payment could be 40 to 50% more than what it would have been 2 years ago. And that's difficult, right? So, obviously when you're saying, unless you really, really need to upgrade, it's tough, especially if you have a locked in interest rate of 3% or even below. To sell a home with a ton of equity, to go and buy a place for 6% interest rate, right? That becomes very difficult with your cash flow.
So hold on to that thought. Nathan and Vincent, are you seeing people not buying because of the interest rate? Or has that deterred, especially, have you guys seen it?
I think it certainly has deterred people here in this market. I think that, it's like it's not even an option for some people now. It has, you talk about a 40 to 50% increase in what your mortgage would have been back when you were trying to compete to buy. And the challenge then was not interest rate, it was competing with 20 offers
Right,
on
at the
one
same
property.
time.
Cash
So,
offers.
yeah, you had any property I listed from January through, say, March or April, it's on the market today. Tomorrow, there's a cash offer north of asking price by an investor. So, and that's any property that was under, that cut off at about the $500,000 to $600,000 mark. So anything below that, you're competing against an investor who's just buying rental property.
So Vince, react to that. Did you have a lot of that too, like investors trying to buy rental property and cash offers?
Yeah, I think that frenzy is probably gonna hit when we have a bit of a correction coming up, and possibly over these next few months, especially in Chicago, November, December, January are pretty dead. And if you have a house that someone's been sitting on for 6-9 months, they may take a cash quick close at 20% under value just to move on. with their lives. And so that's, you get a little bit of that. What I'm seeing right now is I'm negotiating a deal currently, and we're $20,000 apart on a $600,000 deal, a little over 600. And usually this would be, it would snap up, we'd get it done in a day. But buyers are hesitant. Buyers like, you know what, we really want to put that extra money in. What if I buy now and next month the market corrects? And it's not my buyer, it's my seller. So I wish if it was my buyer, I'd shake him a little bit and say, look, how long are you going to be here? Are you going to be here for 3 years? Then you could be in trouble anything you buy. But if you're going to be here for 5 years, $28,000 and 600 is nothing. Especially, and Dave will tell you it's nothing in your payment as well. They're looking, they're can't see the forest for the trees, or they're tripping over dollars to save pennies, or however there's all kinds of phrases to look at it, but they're just not looking at the long game. If you're going to be there 5 years, it's nothing. Just move on. Of course, I'm saying that from the list side. But I tell my clients on the I tell my clients on the buy side as well. Look, let's not get confused here. Let's just move forward. Dave, I have a question for you. What I'm starting to see now, and mortgage brokers don't like this as much because it frankly cuts them out, but there are some mortgages which are assumable. And what that means is if you're selling a house and you have a 2.5% rate on your mortgage, sometimes, it's not always, it's pretty rare, frankly, but sometimes the buyer can assume your mortgage. He can take over your mortgage and your mortgage rate. Now that is super desirable if you're talking about 4% difference in interest rate. Dave, are you seeing some of that? And what, in your opinion, what percentage? I don't know this number. What percentage of mortgages are assumable?
So yeah, I have not seen that. So I don't know the percentage, but that's amazing.
Yes,
if you can go out there and grab a sub 3% rate right now, when interest rates are 6-7%, that is an absolute no-brainer. And I'd recommend all of my clients look at that if it's a possibility. But I actually haven't seen that. I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah.
And so, Dave, speaking of that, though, a lot of questions that we also have gotten in. If people have an influx of cash right now, or they have some money, should they pay off their mortgage?
So that's a loaded question, right? There's so much that goes into planning to figure out what people should do with excess cash. I do see a lot of people that are holding significant cash right now because either they're scared of the market, which is normal in times of volatility like we're seeing this year. It depends on what their interest rate is. So, for instance, I think my rate it's sub 3%, 2.875, I believe, on a 30-year fixed.
Wow.
If they wrote a 60-year mortgage at 2.875, I'd have a 60-year mortgage on that, and I wouldn't pay a dime extra on my mortgage. I would take all that extra cash flow and implement it into my strategies, right? Anywhere elsewhere. A paid off mortgage is a beautiful thing, don't get me wrong, but it's not liquid cash. So if an opportunity presents itself, say you can very easily afford your personal property, and there is a correction in the real estate market. Well, as we were talking before this, corrections in difficult times present opportunities to those that are prepared. So if you are holding on to, let's just simple math, you're holding on to $300,000 cash, or you took all of that and now it's sitting inside of the equity of your mortgage, and you don't have an equity line of credit open, there's a correction in the real estate market. That $300,000 of cash would be very valuable to pick up a couple of rental properties that could now create more cash flow for you. Right?
Absolutely.
Whereas as long as you can easily afford your personal property, that extra cash on the sideline could provide just tremendous value to you in the future.
Yeah.
So Nathan, you're nodding your head. You agree?
Oh, wholeheartedly. I spent a little bit of time in the mortgage world, and I see that all the time. It's called house rich,
Right.
Or house poor.
Or house poor.
House poor, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that that and not only that, but also the tax benefit. A lot of times,
Correct.
with people, their biggest tax write-off is the interest they're paying on their mortgage. So there, like you said, there's a lot of factors that go into that.
So let me ask you guys this too. There was a time when, CDs and the interest rate was great. Can we see an improvement in that as the real estate interest rates go up, or what do you think?
Yeah, so it's kind of an inverse thing, right? So when you see incredible CD rates, so if you look back into the 90s and 80s, you saw these incredible CD rates, 6-month CDs, north of 5%, probably even 6, 7, 8%. However, interest rates were also incredibly high. So you were paying a lot of interest for your mortgage and things like that. So typically when interest rates are high, that's not great for your cash flow. So the ideal situation, which we don't find, is when interest rates are very low or you lock in a very low interest rate. And if interest rates rise in the future, you may be able to find safer asset classes that are paying higher interest while you're holding a very low interest rate on your mortgage and things of that nature.
So let me ask all of you gentlemen here. So oftentimes, when you get a home equity line or you go and, you get an interest rate for your home, they give you the option. Do you want a flexible one? Do you want a fixed one? And of course, at this point, 7%. I mean, I know people who chose to get a flexible interest rate and now their interest rate is skyrocketing. So in general, and I know there's a lot of factors, but is there one that the three of you recommend to get a fixed or flexible? Who wants to start?
I'm a big fan of fixed rate personally. And it also depends on how long you're going to be in that property. Because with an adjustable rate, there may be a window where it's not going to adjust. Maybe it won't adjust for 5 years. So in that case, it may be beneficial if you're going to be in it for less than 5 years.
So you're a fan of the fixed rate?
Correct. If it's going to be somewhere you're going to be for the long haul.
Dave, I'm going to have you weigh in last.
Sure.
Vince, what do you think? What do you recommend to your clients, your buyers and sellers?
Well, like Nathan, I have a history in finance, but I'm not doing it right now, like Dave. I don't like to speak too much to finance because since we've started this conversation, 17 banks have changed their programs entirely. I mean, it changes so often, it'll make your head spin. And there's an infinite number of banks. But I did speak with one of my mortgage guys here in Chicago last week, and there was a 10-year ARM, which means it's fixed for 10 years. And then after 10 years, it adjusts every year according to like a LIBOR or an MTA rate for a total of 30 years. But for 10 years, it's fixed at 5.25, which is much more palatable. And for 10 years, that's enough for most people to have a mortgage fixed. They might not own for more than 10 years. But again, it could have changed since last week. It's really hard to keep up with finances. That's why you need someone like Dave who's doing it all day, every day.
All right.
And on that note, and I want you to answer what we were talking about, I never imagined, do you need a financial advisor? Do you need a financial advisor? 100% do you need a financial advisor, because we are so inundated with our jobs, and again, the socioeconomic class, it does, start with a financial advisor and it will pay off. I just wanted to throw that in there too, Dave.
I appreciate that. So I would say, but on the fixed versus, adjustable rate mortgage, if you're talking 2 years ago, I think it would have been absolutely insane to recommend an adjustable rate mortgage when interest rates were 3%. Right? You lock in that for 30 years. Like I said, I wish I could have done a 60-year lock, right, if they allowed it. Now it can change, right? It's tough. Like Vincent said, these things change consistently, so it's tough to say exactly how this would work. But I've seen people's lives change dramatically within 5 to 10 year periods, right? Where, they do need to upgrade or they need more bedrooms or they need an office in the house because they can work from home now. So those things could potentially mean that if they had a fixed rate for 10 years, they would have absolutely sold their property and been in a, a bigger place or whatever, even downgraded for certain individuals. But it's risky to understand how life is going to change within 10 years, right? The unknown of what curveballs will be thrown your way, both professionally, personally, and so forth. So I'm usually a proponent of a fixed rate, but there are certain clients that they understand that they're buying a starter home. I have one client that got his first job as a practicing physician, finally making some really good money after a long residency and a fellowship. And he knows he just wanted to buy a home. It's going to be the starter home. And eventually, within 5 to 10 years, he wants to get into this specific neighborhood in North Carolina, right? So he ended up going with an adjustable rate, right? So it's just about learning what your clients are going through and then trying to match them up as best as possible and knowing that you got to adapt with the changes that come consistently in life.
But Dave, you bring up a good point, though. Does age matter when you're looking at these loans? Like, in your 20s, maybe you go for a certain type of, fixed or flexible, and maybe in your 50s, you don't. Does age matter?
Well, first, I feel bad for the 20-year-olds right now because obviously the real estate boom and where the interest rates are. I do have some young professional clients that obviously want to buy, but it's tough because of where prices are right now. Age matters to a certain degree, but it's more just the scenarios that people are going through, right? So yeah, if they're nearing retirement, they're likely maybe to be in that home, for the long haul. If they're a young professional, they may move across the country, who knows? So there's a lot of dynamics at play there.
Well, we're wrapping up the show, and the last question. People are so nervous right now that interest rates are even going to go higher. What do you guys think? Should people be panicking? Who wants to take that one?
I wouldn't say panicking, but I think we just have to be realists. I mean, the expectation is, Dave will probably know more about this than I, but this inflation thing is what the raising of the rates is trying to address. And I think we're expecting one more bump in the Fed rate possibly before the end of the year. So I think we just have to brace for it and be realistic, get a good financial advisor to help us position ourselves as best as possible for the future.
Look at that, Dave. Both of them said get a financial advisor.
Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Vin, were you going to say something? And then we'll let Dave have the last word.
Well, if you're asking, should people panic, I would say.
I know, and that was, I thought myself when I said that out loud, I'm like, oh boy, that was not a good way to put it.
Okay, that is not uncommon. That I'm literally talking with someone right now. She was going to offer $850, and then she said, you know what, I'm going to offer $800. It's a massive difference. And it was right after the Fed had raised the rate and she got scared. She got skittish, and she's not the only one who's going through this. But I would say if you're going to have a house for 10 years, don't worry. Try to get it as low as you can, because that's where you really make your money, is on the buy side. Yeah. But don't be concerned that you're going to be underwater here. I don't foresee a huge correction like we had in 2008. But I am not a soothsayer. If I knew it was going to happen, I'd be a trader. I would not be doing real estate. But I just don't think we're going to have this depression.
Words of comfort, Dave, to end the show.
Listen, first, I just think you need to be prepared for whatever life throws you. You need to have really good cash flow management. You need to not over purchase anything in life, right? And hold good emergency funds so that you can prepare for these opportunities, not these, right? When a downturn is happening, that's an opportunity. It is never a good time to panic, right? And if you are more prepared, right, that's when, quote unquote, the rich get richer. They're taking advantage of opportunities, right, when other people are panicking.
Thank you so much, Dave. Vincent Anzalone, thank you for joining us from Chicago. Nathan Williams, and again, Dave,
thank you.
Thanks so much. And folks, if you have a story idea whether it's business, love, relationships, please email us at production@redhousestreaming.com. You can also share the show on multiple social media platforms. I'm on everything, and we're adding more soon. But anyway, thanks again so much for joining us. Stay safe and have a great week.